Hi, my name's Rena, and I'm not exactly sure what to call this yet, this thing, but I'm just gonna call it Y for now. And that's because this is developing. This is, I guess, officially my first podcast type thing. And I just have a lot of questions. And next week, actually, bi weekly, is my goal for how often I'm going to output this type of media. And by then, I will have a co yapper with me so that we have someone to like talk to about this. I'm dragging on about it. But anyway, today's topic is why guys and girls are having trouble being friends. And I obviously have a personal viewpoint on this, as well as a plethora of friends that have had their problems with such instances. And I think like the first thing to start off with is the obvious. And I hear this from my guy friends as well, is that the community itself isn't very nurturing. It's very and if you just look at, majoritively speaking, by the way, I'm not saying every single guy or every single girl or every single person when I bring up these circumstances or incidences. I'm speaking mostly in a broad brushstroke type of feel, majoritively speaking type of idea. And I think it's apparent if you just look around and kind of take in the environment around you. Again, this is also a little bit biased because being located in America, specifically California, it gives it a different outlook as well. But anyway, I digress. So when we're looking at like men and women, girls and guys like being friends, the problem I think, and a lot of girls I talk to and I'm friends with agree with this main point, and that's the point of guys not seeing us as people, and specifically like not seeing us as individuals. Like they see us as a girl first and then a friend maybe, and then they have that, that saying like guys can only be friends with girls they don't find attractive, which I think is quite rude to guys in general, because it means that you're kind of too simple to go beyond something like that. And secondly, it's also disparaging to girls and women because that sucks, in every way. Because now you're also saying like if there's even a chance that someone's like remotely attracted to you, then you can't be friends, and that's dumb. And I think so mainly because if you look at us when we're children, like when we're little kids, everyone's fine being friends, and you're fine, and then later in life when you grow up, the addition of being able to like have sex and stuff like that, um that switches it up, and now it's impossible for men and women to be friends. Like that's ridiculous. In what instance is the addition of something going to now make it so that what was there already is now unable to be? In this like predicament, it just seems silly. Like just having the ability to have sex all of a sudden changes it to where men and women can't be friends, period. That seems ridiculous. And it also, I hear it mostly from again, I'm a little biased, obviously, because I'm coming from a female perspective. But when you're looking at like male and female, like I hear it overwhelmingly so for girls and like women, that they are fine being friends with guys, but not vice versa. And I do have like a few male friends, but the thing is, I think those are also like a little more emotionally intelligent male friends. Like I hear that that's kind of like a common phrase, at least in California, like emotional intelligence is what people look for, especially in a partner, much less a friendship. And if you're going to be friends with a guy, like their emotional intelligence is really important because that's going to be a huge factor into how they treat you, much less those around them. And the guys that I have as friends are usually guys that have girls as friends. Like they have, like they would say probably evenly, if not more so, they're friends with girls than they are with guys. And I think it speaks a lot to the community as well, because you hear it from guys themselves say that the community isn't nurturing. It's not one where, in fact, they've even said that they were envious, maybe not to the depths of like envy, but like they were like a little jealous or like lightly jealous of how girls and women conduct themselves and how we can be emotionally um vulnerable with one another, and you can like call a friend and say like what kind of day you've been having, or you can just genuinely and generally open up to girls, even if you like run to the bathroom for a second, and then like, you know, you have the chit chat in the bathrooms. And many a friendship has begun in a women's restroom. So it's just interesting to see that versus the guy experience, and how that's just not there. And so I think that's why they end up going to women and female like groupings. But the thing is too, not speaking on them, but speaking on a different portion, where you have this kind of dogma that I've heard around, that like males and females take are certain pieces of a same whole. The thing is, I think I find a little bit of fallibility with that. And again, I think it depends on your definition of what that means. But the biggest part that I've seen it utilized in is being incomplete pieces of a whole. And by doing so, guys have become like dumpers of their emotion on women and females. And primarily going back to this idea of emotional intelligence, I think that that's vital for men and women. And I think that it oftentimes gets pushed onto the female community and in general, just because there's this kind of mindset that I see pretty prevalent, especially like in the male community, where females are the nurturers, they're the emotional, they're the kind of motherly figures. And I'm seeing that a lot with friends that are trying to date, like always, is that these guys are like looking for moms. And it's like, number one, if you're looking for a mom, then maybe you got to do some work like in here to ask yourself, why am I looking for a mom? Like, you already have one. Why would you want one that you can now have relations with? That's interesting in and of itself. Any Freudians around? I'm just kidding. Or Electra type of Oedipus inquirers around for that one. But nonetheless, and that comes down to the idea that they want to be nurtured and taken care of. And it's like, yeah, but join the club. Everyone wants to be nurtured and taken care of. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and so then putting this all on females, I mean, and then looking at the male community and seeing like their emotional regulation and like how they handle, you know, criticism, much less any kind of challenge to their mindset. It's just, you can see that there is a lot of work that potentially needs to be done. Just because you see this where they'll be around a female that they aren't even necessarily interested in, and then because they're around them so often, they become so familiar and like comfortable with them, and then they end up like using them as, maybe not meaningfully, I'm not saying this to like guns blazing kind of thing, but like but they end up kind of unloading all of this emotional, not baggage, that's too heavy of a word, but all of this emotional like stuff onto them. And when that happens, then it becomes like, why can't you go to your friends and talk about this? Oh, well, you know, guys don't like talk about that stuff. Yeah, but the male community is the one that I see being deprived of stuff like that. And they're usually the guys that I hear that say that that's why, like the ones that I do have that I consider like real friends, they have a lot of female friends, and they say it's because of the environment that like, and how they feel like around them, not necessarily how they make them feel, but like the welcoming, the supportive like environment. And it's like, why can't you make that with males? Why can't you make that with other male friends? And if that's the case, that you're not seeing that in your community, well, then I think the work starts at home kind of thing with males around you, you know? It's become this like this archaic type of narrative where like males aren't emotional, and like, yeah, they're emotional but angry or sad, but like maybe not crying, or like maybe that's it, and maybe that's the only two they got, you know? So it's become this like odd thing to see, because while they're starving for this emotional support and basically just that, because I think a lot of times it gets kind of stereotyped as being like, oh, like, you know, going back to like 1950s talk jargon, you know, like, oh, don't be a Nancy, or don't be like a girl or something like that. And it's just like, where does that come from? Like, where does that come from? Like, granted, like, you don't, maybe like, war times or something, like you don't want someone sobbing, or like maybe it's coming from that. Like, I'm trying to like get in the shoes of like why someone would even say that to someone else, unless like a guy's like sobbing all the time or something. Like, I can see why someone would say that, not that I necessarily agree with it, but like, to like, for someone to barely be expressing their emotions, or maybe that they need help, or maybe that they just like need a hand, then like, I don't understand why someone would be like, stop being such a girl, and it's just like, yeah, but like, you guys also have like, with violence rates, because I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say certain words on here, but like, for violence rates that lead to unpleasant outcomes, it seems overwhelmingly successful by the male community and not so much so with the female community. So like, you're literally making guys and those around you like kind of projecting and oppressing them and saying that they can't show their emotions, and some of them don't have girls as friends, so they don't have that outlet and that dumping ability to like be able to throw that onto a girl nearby. And so if they only have males, where are they supposed to go, and how are you supposed to get those feelings out? Because I don't know if this is news or not to anyone, but like, when you don't let your feelings out or like express them in a way where even like go off by yourself and express them or whatever, when you don't do that, it kind of adds up, and not just in a emotionally stative way. It adds up in a way where it builds up in your body, and you can literally have like a heart attack or a stroke. So it seems to be that like, you can't just tell someone like, get over it, or like, man up, so to speak, because that doesn't work. And also, like, why can't someone show their emotions? Like, are you afraid of a little crying? Like, and if so, like, how masculine are you really if you're going to be shaken to the core about a guy crying around you? Like, honestly, at some point it becomes this kind of idea that like, I hate to say it because I don't necessarily agree with it all the way. I think it's per case, but like, the fragile male ego idea. Like, how fragile is the ego for a guy to not let a buddy, like, have a hard time for a second, and just like, you don't have to like hold him, you can just be there for him and like listen to him, and just say like that it sucks, and that like, you can see why they're upset, and if like there's anything you can do. It doesn't have to be like hyper feminine and like, um holding hands, and I don't know what they think we do. That's why I'm trying to make this up, like holding hands and like crying together. I don't know. Like, we don't really do that either. Like, some of us do, but like, that's not like a trademark thing. Like, oh, you're a girl, you're gonna go cry with the others, if you're feeling sad. Like, it's not a promise, but I mean, yeah, it is in the community. Like, but yeah, that's just what I see as being like the big problem with males. So then what happens is, because they don't really have an outlet, sorry, like little hair, but like, because they don't have like an outlet to express these emotions with, when they end up being around a girl, much less like frequently, then I think they just assume they're in love with them. Like, I think they just like are, I'm around you a lot, and like, we hang out and we talk about normal things, and then like, surprise, because I've heard it happen not only to myself, but like numerous of my friends. Like, when we go over, like, whenever this happens, um believe it or not, some of us will like go to each other and be like, bro, can you believe this just happened? And then they'll be like, dude, I just had that happen, or oh, my best friend's going through that. And then they'll hear the story. It's the same story over and over and over again. It's like, guy hangs out around girl too much, not even his type, but hangs out around them too much. And then flash forward a couple months later, and they're like confessing their love. Oh my God, I'm in love with you. And then the girl's like, what the heck are you talking about? I thought we were friends. I thought I made that clear too. Guess what? That doesn't work either. You can literally say, I just want to be friends, and that does not work majority of the time. But again, getting back to this idea that a lot of guys don't see us as people. I'm not saying, again, that that's every guy. I'm not saying you right there, you don't see us as a person. Maybe, if you're getting mad at this, maybe. But if you're not, and you're saying, yeah, no, I know a couple guys like that, then like, you're maybe not one of them, But like, they have this clumping mechanism where it says, you have this and this, you're a girl, like, you're I'm always gonna think of you in a sexual way, and that sucks. Like, I'm here to say that sucks, because like, bro, evolve. Like, you know what I mean? Like, evolve. If we're like the top species, if we're like the top species on this planet, and humans are like the natural like apex, like your mind needs to evolve too, dude. Like, not just your like body. And what are you, ripping things apart with your hands? Like, sorry, I don't mean to get off on a tangent, but like, seriously, like, it's just when you hear that whole like, you know, high value female and like stuff like that, the very like Andrew Tate, like, I think it's what they call red pilling or whatever, like, I'm not sure about the jargon, but like, it's very like Andrew Tate, like objectifying and stuff like that. And the thing is, usually the guys that adopt that mindset are, guess what, like, not happy. Surprise, like, wow, that was really, couldn't guess that one. Like, it's because you're literally looking, and I'm sorry I said literally again, like, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine too, but like, you're most definitely looking at a girl or a female with a value, which is like usually what you put on objects, or maybe like an experience, personal experience or something, but you're looking at them and saying, you do this for me. And it's like, that's not what it's about, babe. Like, it's not about that. It's literally about someone being an individual in and of themselves. You know, I'm kind of mumbled that up, but like, they're an individual in and of themselves. They have hopes, they have dreams, they have goals, they have, you know, everything that you have, just on a different scale. Maybe, you know, maybe you guys don't express them in the same exact ways, but to look at someone and say, no, you do that for me. Number one, you're not a complete person. If you're saying that like, I need you to like do this for me because like I'm the rock and she's the fluffy soft. Like I get it. Like, I get the whole like, we complete one another, but I mean, you guys should be complete separately as well. Like, because if not, it becomes like psychologically dependent or just toxic. And so if you're not a complete person by yourself, like, do what you will, but maybe perhaps getting in a relationship or being intimate with someone isn't the best option. Yeah. But anyway, my main focus is on the seeing someone as an individual aspect. And if you can't see a girl, like, if you can't in your mind, like, take the grouping of like girls and females and go, this one is a friend and this one is like maybe a romantic possibility. Like, I've seen it time and time again where like, it's just guys and they have no girls as friends, and then they wonder why they haven't been able to land a date in the last 3 or 4 years. And every girl, they're like literally, again, oh my god, trust me, I'm rolling my eyes too, but like, but they're most definitely like making every girl that's in their orbit a goal. And that's so unhealthy because you're not seeing them as individuals. If you see them as individuals, also, might I add, a friend of mine and I were talking, and we kind of came to this like saying that was really, I think, really smart, but you'll be the judge of that. Is like, most of the guys that like we have approach, or like that we've seen approach and things like that, and they just like strike out all the time. It's because like, especially with COVID, like coming out of COVID, a lot of people are just socially awkward. Like, I'm sure you've heard it like in your own circles where like the new generation like can't even look me in the eyes. Like, and I've seen it like all around. Like, I've seen it with adults, and I've seen it with like people becoming adults. Like, they can't really socially interact, and if they do, it's like in like TikTok or meme form. So I think the big part of that too is like, if you're not friends with girls, then like, it was put like this: if you're not doing so well with girls, maybe it's because you don't have any as friends. And I think that's something that should really sink in with people, because if you don't know how to talk to a girl because you don't know what they like or what they want, I mean, not to like spoil the whole adventure, but guys and girls are kind of similar. Like, not totally similar. I'm not saying like blow for blow they're similar, but like they're pretty similar, like in like the basics of it. I've heard arguments from both sides that mirror each other and literally and mirror each other, and I'm going, you guys are like saying the same thing, just maybe in a different format, because we are dealing sometimes with different material or biology, you know, or representations or presentations, anything like that. So there are variants, obviously, based on the people that you're talking about, but overwhelmingly, I think that's a big part that's also pushing guys into listening to these guys like Andrew Tate more is because they're just getting nowhere in their head, and they have this idea that girls are money grubbing, um go for, what they want, and they're just like, they're gonna treat you like a piece of meat. And meanwhile, like, you're treating them like a piece of meat and going, no, that's how the world works. No, that's how your world works. Like, and if you could just open it up a little bit and maybe not, because, like, I mean, there's so many stories out there where, like, a guy is literally living out of his car, and then a girl, like, meets him and doesn't care that he's living out of his car, and they, like, date for years, and then he, gets on the track to where he's feeling good and feeling, like, more successful, and then they get married, like, 2 years later. So it's not like, it's not the money, it's not it. For some it is, like I said, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about every single girl and every single guy. I'm saying, majoritively speaking, if you have substance, think of the people that you've met where you felt something deeper than what you feel when interacting with the majority of other people. And I think that's the stuff that makes life worth living, because then you have real value, not this objectifying value where you say, you do this for me, I have these certain things that you have that are promised for me. It's more so, I see you as an individual, I admire a lot of what you are, and it comes from a place of respect too, and it comes down to that as well. When you have guys trying to be friends with girls, it comes down to respect. I'm well aware that, and I've heard it before, where a guy will hear what I'm saying in regards to this, but just the beginning where I say, I have some guy friends that, like, would never try that with me, and then they go, oh, please, oh, just give that, just wait, like, oh, just, if they had the chance. That's not about whether or not someone's attracted to you at all. It's not. It really is about respect. And if you respect the individual and you respect them in their mindset, how they think, who they are, then that would never happen because you respect them. And if it's really hard to grasp, then you know what? Why don't you think of your closest guy friend, your closest friend, and why don't you think about making out with him? Oh, wait, you don't. So if that helps, like, why don't you think of a girl as that, whatever you got to do to, like, not jump her or, like, feel like you need to, like, have her or, like, confess to her when you probably don't even know the things that matter to her. A lot of the times when a guy says, oh, I'm in love with you, you don't even know what does someone do when they're sad to cheer themselves up? What does someone like to do on their off day? What's a dream of somebody's and that they'd like to fulfill? Things that matter to the person, not things that, like, oh, she makes me feel special, or oh, she always, knows what snack to get me. Those are all you things. Those are not things where you might be in love with her. If that's the case, then maybe, like, a dog that's trained to retrieve things from you is what you're in love with, not, like, a person. I know that's kind of a silly example, but I mean, if I'm saying if a trained dog can do it, then, like, maybe that's not the reason that you're in love with her. You should be in love with her because of who she is and what she wants to be separately. And you don't have to fall in love with every girl you get along with. Like, I think a lot of relationships that might not be the best. I'm not saying everyone again, but, like, let me make that clear. I don't want people, like, arguing about that kind of thing. But I think a lot of people get into relationships out of convenience and not necessarily out of vetting whether or not this person is truly someone that they'd want to be with in the long term. And time and time again, or most likely, more like happening and happening again, or I'll find a different term for that. But, like, I've heard it multiple times where a guy will say that he likes her because of how she makes him feel about himself, which is a valid thing. I'm not saying it's totally not, but it's not one aspect of a person. How they make you feel, you're asking for a cheerleader, you can hire those, and maybe arguably cheaper than what you might spend on a partner. But I just wish I could see a little bit more of guys trying to get to know people, trying to get to know girls beyond the end goal of being that they want to sleep with them. And I think that's my big why. Like, why do people have to be so simple? Like, granted, I'm not denying that that simple nature isn't there, but if we are like an apex predator or like the top of our species and you do have that mindset, then why would that not also mean emotionally and intelligently? I don't see why that wouldn't carry over. So, um, yeah. And like I said, I'm seeing it mostly because guys aren't emotional with each other and don't have that reliability within their own groupings. And so, like I said, when they're around a girl a lot, they like start emotionally relying on her and then go, I think I'm in love with her because you're like groovy. But like, that's not what it is the majority of the time. And not listening to when a girl is very clear about them not being interested and the signs of why they wouldn't be interested. I think a lot of guys get into denial and they think, if I pursue this long enough, one day I will have it. And it's not like that. People aren't a prize like that. They're not like this thing that you can like work towards. If I put in like all this like money into, it's like building a car. If I keep buying parts and building this car, like one day I'll have a car. Like that's different than like hanging out with somebody and then after a long while of hanging out with them going, I will have them one day. No, no, sometimes people are not interested, and that's not something to be taken personally. That's called subjectivity. It's called taste. People have different tastes. You might think someone's super hot and then your friend's like, uh-huh, and then vice versa, like, you know. So yeah, I think guys just have a lot of work to do, majoritively speaking, when it comes to why they even like things. A lot of like introspection I see is missing, like as to why they think how they think, where certain emotions came from, where certain sayings even come from, because sometimes stuff just comes out of someone's mouth and they're not thinking about what that means. But so guy culture, I hope guy culture can get a little bit better so that it's a little bit more nurturing, because don't worry, your friend's not going to fall in love with you if you're just hanging out with him and talking to him too much. I'm speaking as a guy to a guy, mind you. And why not be like, you don't have to be like I mean, this whole like stereotype of soft, you know, like someone can be really strong and then also just have a bad day or like have an off time, or something horrible could unfortunately happen to them where like they lost a loved one. And and it sucks that the guy community can't be more like supportive slash nurturing about that. It's more of like a taboo. And yeah, so I think that's my main why. And also maybe striving to see girls and women as people and not put this whole idea of a high value female on the plate, because it's not a thing. That's, you're just making things up now, it sounds like. Because number one, value is based on the person subjectively. um so if you're like high value female to another guy, like that means something completely different to them anyway. Because I can think that like there's high value in like writing the word the all day on a piece of paper, and someone else can be like, that's not valuable at all, but yet to me it's valuable. So like it doesn't I mean, that's a really dumb example, but I mean, like, I'm trying to use a simple example. I could say, okay, let's say feeding a fish. I could say I'm super obsessed with this one little fish, and like I think Virginia Woolf uses that as an example too, if I'm not mistaken. But there's like a little fish and like it's swimming around, and like I'm super into this fish and I like feed it every day and I like make it all fancy in its little tank and stuff. And then like this other person's like, you need to get a you need to get a job, like you can't take care of this fish all day. And I'm like, I really like hanging out with this little fish, and like, so my value could be liking that little fish and like taking care of it and making it like a super nice life and like being then grooving on this fish. And someone else can think that that has zero value. So like I said, because value itself is like different per person, you can't even say high value female, because that doesn't make any sense. That's, I mean, it does, but it doesn't. Like, it's, you're talking Tate style, you know. And like, and what does he know? Like, you know, and then you're also following strangers like Andrew Tate and saying they know what's up. Like, what are you talking about? Like, he sounds miserable. Like, have you heard him speak? He sounds miserable. He sounds like he's like this. Like, he sounds like he's on the edge, like always. Like, he's like, he sounds like he's constantly like one tipping point away from like doing something wild, you know. So yeah, that's just don't listen to other people, I guess. Like take into it, like you can consider what they're saying, but also like don't just listen to them. Like what does he know? Like, you know, and you can ask that obviously of me too, obviously. What do I know? Like exactly. But I mean, just take a look around and like learn things for yourselves and be open to like what else is out there and not just these narratives, because maybe guys are really lonely and they're not having the same success as they were like 15, 20 years ago with girls and women, and so they like double down and follow these guys that are not dealing with a full stack there, and or with a full deck rather, and they just follow them, and then it makes them even more like incel-y, and then more oh women, and it's just like, dude, like that's not the case. Go talk to some, you know, worst case scenario, go talk to some. Yeah, they're not gonna laugh in your face, oh dumbass, they're not gonna laugh in your face or anything like that, but like some girls around you, be like, hey, do you have like any pointers for like how I can get to know people better, or just become friends with them? I mean, you guys listen to the same music. Like everyone listens to the same music. It's not like I'm listening to like only like, I don't know. Just, you know, get out of your box a little bit, see the world, talk to some people. We're a lot more similar than you think, you know. So, yeah. But yeah, I hope that this was cool in some way. And then, like I said, if you're a guy and you're wondering how to be friends with girls, start looking at them like they're your homies and your brothers. Well, not exactly, but you know what I mean. I think you know what I mean. You get it. You get it. How you treat your guy friends, treat the girls like that too. I mean, unless you're just like always objectifying girls to guys, then maybe rethink some things, because that's also kind of strange. Because then you're also a slave, sort of speaking, to your sexual desires. And like, do you want that? Like, if you're like, also if you're like a guy that's like, you're like, I got it. Like, I'm prime, you know, prime guy, good alpha, whatever. Like, would you? How does that help if you're like a slave to your sexual desires? Like, obviously, you're not the boss of your house. You know what I mean? If you're a slave to your sexual desires, like, so balance. Have some girls as friends and don't ever do it with them. Like, just have them as friends. Like, it's not hard, no pun intended. You just gotta go for being friends and be fine with that, and then yeah. I have a couple guy friends that got creeped out when a girl like that they were friends with started hitting on them and being like, well, someone like you, and they were like, ugh, and they're not, you know, and they're straight, so is what I'm saying. So they don't have, I'm just saying that because if someone in the audience is like, oh yeah, well, I bet they're not straight, they're straight. So like they just, you know, see girls and women as people. So give it a try. It's pretty fun seeing people as people. Thanks. Bye. Oh.